things that happened in the Grand Teton region 2 summers ago. At the time, my now husband, H, was an enthusiastic outdoor enthusiast who had also been in the military. As an ecology major who desired to spend more time in nature, he made the decision to accompany me on my very first solo backpacking trip. In case you're not aware, the Grand Tetons are renowned for their abundant wildlife, particularly grizzly bears. Up until now, all I had ever done with bears was observe a small black bear cross the road while I was safely parked. There were grizzly country signs wherever I looked, and it wasn't helping to ease my anxiety. With a machete dangling from his belt, big knives fastened on both of his sides, and bear spray fastened to his waist, my guy resembled Indiana Jones. You get the idea. Our 25-mile excursion started entirely on an incline. You should make noise when in bear area to avoid startling any wildlife by inadvertently approaching it from behind. As one might expect, conversing is challenging when climbing a steep slope while toting a 40-pound pack. After an hour, we were nearly at the summit of the climb when I realized that all sound had disappeared from the tree save for the roar of the stream to our left. The absence of sound in the woods is frequently an indication that a predator is close by. We were about to summit the hill at this moment, and I was in front of my boyfriend. We had not spoken to each other for the previous 20 minutes because we were too exhausted. At the same moment, we both sensed the silence and exchanged knowing looks. I suddenly froze as soon as I crested the hill. A grizzly bear was sitting in the middle of the trail, barely 10 feet in front of me. Since my husband was behind me, he wasn't aware yet, so I took the first action that occurred to me. I grabbed my arm and began throwing it wildly behind me, still in my frozen pose, hoping to catch H's attention. I was too scared to say anything. The bear looked at us the entire time as it moved from sitting to standing on all fours. H abruptly turned to face me, putting me behind him, and he began to yell. He's been in the military, so he can holler. The grizzly approached us at a leisurely pace, seemed unfazed. I was so close to fainting out from fear at this point. We heard a loud snap from the trees when this bear was approximately 5 feet ahead of us. When the bear heard it too, he took off for the creek. Once more, there was a loud crack, but it was considerably closer than previously. When H said, "It's probably just some falling branches," neither of us believed him. By now we were hurrying up the trail to get some distance between ourselves and the grizzly and those weird noises. H stopped moving in front of me just as I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight up. I turned to look behind me as he turned to face me. We still don't know exactly what we witnessed. There was a big black-brown mass back where we stood. It appeared to be 3 times larger than the grizzly bear we had just seconds earlier spotted, which was already quite massive. It turned to face us and got to its feet using its back legs. Although it had a bear-like appearance, there was something strange about the shape. It was probably stupid to flee at this point, but that's exactly what we did. Although we both heard footsteps behind us, we didn't turn to look back. After a while, the footsteps stopped being heard. By now, I was a complete wreck. H was trying his hardest to cheer me up. "Honey, this is extremely unusual. The bears usually stay away from humans. We're gonna be okay. I'm sure that won't happen again." That was plenty to persuade me to keep going with the backpack. But shortly after, we came to a clearing where we made the decision to stop and have a snack. We had been sitting for about a minute when I saw the bushes were starting to move in a line toward the clearing. In our direction. This teenage bear emerges from this bush, seeming every bit as terrified as we were, but he headed straight for us. With bear spray ready, H, being the insane nut that he is, chose to yell and charge back at the bear. That proved effective, causing the bear to flee. I kept thinking it was simply my luck, but what happened the second night was far worse. We had informed the ranger station of the trails and route we intended to travel before starting our backpacking trip. With this information, they typically send a ranger on horseback to see how you're doing and to make sure everything is as it should be. We were fortunate to have the most challenging trails available to us, as there weren't many more that were authorized. It seemed that for the 3 days we spent hiking on those paths, we were the only hikers. While we were traveling, we didn't come across anyone else. I suppose we overlooked the ranger who stopped by to see how we were doing. The previous day, we hadn't spotted any hoof prints, but we had been tracking them the entire second day. We had a difficult time during the day attempting to get my boots adjusted with the laces and socks to alleviate the discomfort I was experiencing from my foot issues. We only had an hour or two of daylight remaining as we resumed our hike, because it gets dark quickly in the woods. It was getting dark outside, and I was tired. H was the only one whose headlamp worked. For some reason mine wouldn't even turn on. In addition to finding food, we had to find a place to camp. It was hard to hear H or make out any other sounds coming from the woods because it was chilly and the wind was screaming and rushing through the trees. We hiked in the dark for another hour until we came to a clearing. It resembled a bowl more, actually. It appeared to have a diameter of 200 meters, and each of its sides descended 10 meters from the trail to the clearing's base. We both sensed something off about this area, though he didn't express to me how freaked out he was until after we had left. We had no moonlight, so the only sources of light we had were his headlamp, our little camp stove, and the flashlight I retrieved from my rucksack. The foliage was really dense everywhere else, but half the trees were dead and had fallen right into the bowl. H pulled out his portable speaker and began playing Ninja Sex Party to assist calm my nerves. This was ineffective since it only caused a discord of noises as it echoed off the trees. It would, he reasoned, deter any predators in the area. It was at this point that we realized our anxiety wasn't paranoia. It was quiet again, not a bird had chirped since we'd arrived at the clearing. It might have also had something to do with the annoying music, but we chose to switch it off and enter the tent based on our prior experience. It was chilly too. We had just settled into our sleeping bags when we heard thuds and deep cracks coming from the trees beyond. Trees falling? This season, there had been extremely little rain and a lot of wildfires. Each of us froze. That sound originated inside the clearing. It was not an echo. Not a falling tree, for sure. It originated directly outside the tent. We both came to a standstill. H put his hand in mine, and we stayed stuck to each other. Something made an impression as it dragged across the outside of our tent. It was so thin that it resembled a finger. I trembled and murmured, "What is it?" "I don't know. It shouldn't be a person. We're the only ones on this side of the mountain." I was doing everything I could to hold back the tears and pay attention to the outside world. I heard footsteps, but I was unable to identify what they were. The steps came to a stop, and the tent side began to slowly push inward. I shone my spotlight at the side of the tent since, by this time, whatever was outside knew we were inside. I felt my blood run cold at what I witnessed. It appeared to be a face pressed up against the tent. I could see the lips open, the nose, and how the tent around the mouth billowed in and out with each breath they took. H cocked a Glock that he had taken from his sleeping bag. The silence was broken by the sound. The face withdrew, and we heard brisk footsteps moving in the direction of the clearing's edge. We stayed inside the tent till the sun came up the following day. The scent of urine was the first thing we detected. We exited the tent and had a look around. Someone had urinated on our embers, leaving behind an obscene smell from evaporated urine. There were footprints all around our tent, making several circles. Our tent was painted with muddy handprints. Regardless, we believe it was mud. In the bush, wildlife is not always the most dangerous thing.